So I caught a guy that broke my well. So I'm going to get into that in a little bit and tell you how I fixed it and what I did all about it. So this morning I came down here to fill the IBC tank with the well, but I hadn't discovered the well was broke just yet until later. When I fill the IBC tank, now I can come down here, plug the, I would take you in a camper, but it's just such a mess in there. I mean, we're getting ready to tear it down and it's in bad shape, but I plug the well into the 2,000 watt inverter. So I walk down here, and I do it for exercise. I'd consider putting a switch on the well pump where I can just shut the well off, turn it back on, but I would still have to come down here and turn the inverter on and off. And the reason is because that 2,000 watt inverter uses 2 amps an hour, whereas the 1,000 watt inverter uses 1 amp an hour, maybe even less than that. So it's a waste of amperage to use it unless you need something really high powered, like the well pump. So I come down here, turn on the inverter, plug in the well pump, then I go back up there, fill the IBC tank. Well, today I decided I was going to do a little experiment and see how long I could run the well pump with the inverter. Because normally I just do it 5 or 10 minutes, but I wanted to test it. It was pretty sunny. It's still pretty sunny, but we got this little burst of cloud right now covering the sun, but so I wanted to test it. Well, boy, did I test it today, my goodness. So I filled the sinks for Carolyn's laundry. So I probably ran it maybe half hour today, and I was pretty impressed. So I came back down here and I would check the amps on the inverters. Now, you will know that I just added in charge controller. So now I have 6 solar panels on one charge controller, 6 solar panels on the other charge controller. And essentially what that means is now I'm getting double the amps into the batteries. I've explained all this before. I'll try not to get in too much depth with it. But what it is these charge controllers only put in 25 amps into the battery if there's not a load on it. Even though I got 50 amps, that's all it's going to put in there because it doesn't want to stress out the battery. So it thinks I have a 100 amp hour battery. You're only supposed to put 25% of the amps hours into it. So the charge controller put 25 amps into it. 25% of a 100 amp hour battery is 25 amps. So now that I have 2, it's putting 25 on one, 25 on the other, and that gives me 50 total amps going into the batteries. It's worked out amazingly well. It was just a theory. Turned out my theory was true. Well, it also means that I have basically 2 sets of solar panels now, all going into one battery bank. So when I came down here, I noticed that one charge controller was reading 17 amps and the other one was running 25 amps. That told me that I had a problem. So I came out here and I turned just the 6 panels. That was what was so nice. I didn't have to do all 12. I just had to do 6. So I turned the 6 over going to that charge controller. So it's these 2 in the front and those last 4 in the back. And then I got, on the other charge controller, I got these up here, and then the top 2 front and back. So 6 and 6. So I just turned the 6 over, and I started lifting one at a time, check the amperage, let it back down, lift the next one. Well, I saw that 2 were not working right. For whatever reason, as I was playing with it all, the other one started working. The first one started working again, so I just left that one alone because it's still working. Maybe I knocked something loose when I turned it over, I don't know. But that one right there kind of in the center there, wasn't working. It was 0 amps. So I cleaned the wires. It was just basically what I always do, is they kind of get corroded. I mean, I just put it up here 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, but maybe the wires got corroded. And I put it back together and it worked. And so I flipped them all back up and it stopped working again. I could tell the amps dropped. So I flipped them all back upside down. Sure enough, that one wasn't working again. I played with it and played with it and played with it. And then I discovered that sometimes it would turn on, sometimes it wouldn't. So I discovered that it must have had a bad wire in there. And when I, like it was broke or something. And 1 minute it would shift correctly and the next minute. So I made sure all the connections were tight, screwed down the screws and everything. Nothing worked. So I just replaced the wires. It took me 5 minutes once I decided that's what I was going to do. And it works great now, so I'm getting all the amperage I needed. But every time I ran a test to see if the panels were working, I would turn the well pump on. So I mean, it was right here. So I'd click on the inverter, run it for a minute, look at the amps, see if it would run up to 25. And if it did, fine, shut it back off. Then I turn them all upside right again and turn it back on, and that one wasn't working, shut it back off, turn it on, shut it off, turn it on, shut it off. Just like a normal well pump would do. Because on a normal well pump, you had to fill a pressurized tank. So when you turn on your water, that pressurized tank fills the sink. That's what it has pressure in it, so it pushes that water into your house. Well, when that tank starts to empty, the pressure reduces, your pump kicks on, fills it back up, and then shuts off. So it's always kicking on and off, whereas ours kicks on once a day, and then I shut it off. Well, this time I was just turning it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. So I went back up there, and I was collecting all the water in the bucket because I was going to use the water for toilets or whatever. So I went back up there and I noticed that the water was dirty. Oh no. Now, I've told you in the past that our water gets dirty when we have flooding rains around here. That ditch floods and just runs straight to the well. Well, I've done all kinds of things to correct it, and it's gotten a lot better this year. I haven't had but one time that it get dirty. And then I cleaned all the leaves out of the ditch, made sure that the culvert wasn't getting clogged, because that's what was happening, is all those leaves would run down from other people's property right into my culvert, clog my culvert up, water would run over right into the well. So I cleaned all the leaves, and so every flooding rain we've had since then, the well has not gotten dirty. Not saying it won't, it just hasn't this year. So it's been a lot better than all the previous years. Well, here it is, the water's dirty. And I thought, what the heck happened? Did the pump fall down? So I raised the pump, and because sometimes that rope stretches. Well, actually it has stretched. So I have the pipe hanging out about a foot from the stanchion pipe. So the black pipe comes out about a foot. That's what I originally did. Well, it slid all the way down. That rope stretch that holds it. So you raise it back up and it stretches some more. Well, I think it's just about done stretching, but it was almost back to sliding all the way back down. So I went ahead and pulled it out a foot. That didn't help. I flushed the well 3 times. That always solves my problem. Flush it 3 times and the problem's gone. The water's clean. It wasn't this time. It occurred to me what must have happened. Now, this is my first pump. This is the pump I bought the first time right here. It is a little big. It's 35 gallons per minute. The one we have in it is 15 gallons per minute. So it's a little big, and when we put the well packer in there and the new well liner, I would have to take all these screens off in order for that to fall down in there properly. Well, I just figured I'd get a better pump, smaller pump, and it didn't pump as much water, which is a big deal to me because that well is not very deep. I can suck that well dry pretty quick because the recovery rate's only like 5 gallons a minute. Well, this is 35 gallons a minute. So we took this one out, and we're going to use it as a backup if we ever need to. Clean it up, use it as a backup. All you really need to do is clean it up, put it in a trash can of bleach water, and let it run, and that'll clean it up real good. But you can see that it is rusty. This is a big complaint about this particular well. Now, this is just the neatest well and pump in the world. It is 110 volt. Most wells are 220. Well, in order to have 220, I'd have to get one of those big generators. I'm not even sure how I could do it off the inverter. I just never researched it. So I searched high and low for this well pump when we first moved here, right before we first moved here. And we found it on Amazon. And everybody raved about it. Everybody loves this pump. I love this pump. But the biggest complaint is it rust. And it doesn't even take very long to rust. When I was at Mom's house before I got here, I tested it to see if we could run it. Put it in a trash can, of bleach water actually. We hooked it up to the inverter, and the little 1,000 watt inverter wouldn't run it. We didn't have a 2,000 watt back then. So I hooked it up to the generator and it ran. So problem solved. I figured if I ever wanted to get a 2,000 watt, which eventually we did, I'd get a 2,000 watt. So then I just set it in the back of the seat of the truck, put it in its box and left it there. Well, I don't know, wasn't even a week later, I checked it out again and it had already started rusting. So it doesn't even take very long to rust. So after I flushed the well, and so ended up I had to run the well a lot because I was flushing it and letting it fill back up, flushing it, letting it fill back up. So I ran the well pump, I don't know, maybe an hour today in total, and the solar panels are still keeping up. I just figured that pump must have broke loose a big piece of rust, because what it is when you first start it, it just comes out just murky, dirty, horribly dirty, somewhat of a rust color. But then it clears up a little bit. It's still dingy water, but it's cleaner than it was when that first bucket you fill up. So I decided that I wasn't going to mess with it. It'll probably clean itself up over time. So in the meantime, I hooked my filters back up. I had these hooked up last year. You saw that. I took it off for the winter. It was just too hard to operate in the winter. They freeze. I got to keep them warm. So I had to put them in that water tank box. So these are 5 micron filters. So the first filter housing, these are just regular, you can get these at Walmart, just regular house filters. And you can see I just hooked my hose up to it. It's not a proper fit. You could actually buy pieces that would make it fit in there better, but it seals up pretty good, just little drip leaks. I wouldn't run this in the house without the proper fittings. So this is a 5 micron sediment filter. This is a charcoal filter 5 micron, and that's a charcoal filter 5 micron. So there's 2. So what I do is, when this one gets dirty, the center one, I take the last one there, I put it up to here and put a new one down there. And then I just change out the sediment filter about every 3 months. Like I said, I originally stopped using the sediment filters because in the wintertime, it's just, it is a lot of work having to deal with it. So I hope the pump issue is rectified by the time winter comes around, because I don't want to have to deal with those filters in the winter. But I have to slide that in here, the entire hose assembly. I might just if I have to do it this winter, I might just disconnect the filters from the hose, because it's just 3 little pieces of hose and then 2 long hoses. Might just disconnect the long hoses and stick the filters in there, because it's a lot of work when it's cold and you don't want it to freeze. Well, the water is pretty clean now, so you can see here, real clean. I don't know if you can tell in the camera the difference between the 2 waters, but that one's a lot dirtier, so much better. So I caught the guy who broke the well, me. So if you'll click this up next box, it'll take you to a video where I was talking about somebody tried to start a fight with Carolyn. So if I can inspire you to fix your problems when you're living your dreams. Thanks for watching.